Alfon, good morning.
Hello, you like this?
Oh, nice.
Wow.
Nice.
تشوف في الكاميرا.
Today we're going to see 3 places. We will start with the Valley of the Kings and the Queen Hatch and the Queen Hatshepsut Temple and the Valley of the Queen. The whole tour takes about 3 or 3.5 hours, and then we come back, we cross the Nile back by a ferry, and we take some rest in a boat, and then we go to see Luxor Temple. You might remember we didn't see the temple yesterday, and the tour there takes only half an hour. It's only across the street, and as we have some amendments, we made some amendments in the flight back to Cairo. We will be picked up from the hotel at 1:45. We get another airplane earlier than the second one, so that's better. I don't have to wait so long. Huh? In the here, the main crop is the sugar cane, and you might see everywhere to the left and right side of the bus the sugar cane grown, and it is a strategic crop for Egypt because we export the sugar to Europe and the States, and we import the Cuban sugar, which is less quality and less sweetness than the Egyptian sugar, and through the difference in the price, we pay our debts. So the farmers here are forced to give half of their crops or half of their production to the government with the official price, and the other half, it depends on the market every month or every year. But it's by law, the farmers should grow sugarcane in the south, and they should give half of their production to the government. The ancient Egyptians called Thebes after they left Memphis, the oldest capital city in Egypt, and moved to the south to be near the spots of trouble in Africa. And they lived in Thebes east, where we have been yesterday, and they built their houses and their shops and their embassies and their palaces and their temples. But now nothing left from all those buildings except for the temples, because they were made of stone. And after that, he crossed the Nile from the east to the west, where we are now, to the city of the dead, where the embalmers, they took care of the mummy before they buried inside tunnels underground in rock hewn modern cemetery. You might see that Islamic way of burial. No milestones above ground, no names, no signs, because we're ashes to ashes. Just a little pit underground, and they bury the man on his back, wrapped in white blanket. No casket, no coffin, no sarcophagus, and no cremation. It's forbidden for the Muslims to cremate the body, because they said God respected the body and created a very sophisticated body, and it's not nice to bury it after that. Just so then they came from the ground, and you give it back to the ground of the dead. To the right side of the hill, you might see a house. That's the house of the 2 Englishmen, Lord Carnarvon and Sir Howard Carter, the 2 Englishmen who discovered the tomb of Tutankhamen in 1922. They got a permission, 6 years of excavations and digging, and in the last year of the excavations they found the tomb of Tutankhamen, which is the only intact tomb in the whole of Egypt we discovered until now. But this is not the last pharaoh, as some people you might believe, because we have at least 3 other pharaohs. We don't know where are their treasures, where their treasures are. One of them is Cleopatra, the most beautiful queen ruled Egypt, the woman who could speak 7 languages while she was only 17 years old. And when Caesar came to Egypt with maps from the Middle East and Syria, she corrected him his maps, his military maps. She was a very fascinating woman, knowledgeable. And the tomb of Alexander the Great, who came to Egypt at 332 before Christ, and he loved Egypt very much, and he wanted it to be a capital city for the whole Greek Empire, and he ordered his engineer Dinocrates to build a new city on the north coast of Alexandria to carry his name. And Dinocrates chose a little beautiful village south of the Mediterranean Sea called Rakotis, and he built the city which should carry the name of Alexander. And Alexander went further to the east to Mesopotamia, today called Iraq, and more conquests, and there he died with a fever, and he was 33 years old. And his body was supposed to be sent to Macedonia, where he was born, in Yugoslavia, but the follower of Alexander the Great, he went on ahead of an army and captured the body of Alexander, and he buried that body in Alexandria. Until now we don't know where is the body of Alexander the Great, but it's somewhere in Alexandria. The driver, Mr. Omar, by the way, has a refrigerator with refreshments. If you'd like to have some cola, it's only £1 in his culture, in his refrigerator. So on the way, if you're thirsty, you'd like to have something to drink, he has Coca-Cola. So after we've seen the Valley of the Kings, there are 2 more stops. The Queen Hatshepsut Temple and the Valley of the Queens. In the Valley of the Queens we shall see the tomb of the Prince Amun-Her-Khebishef. That was one of the princes of Ramses III. He died young at the age of 14 years old. Princes who died during the New Kingdom 1500 before Christ. After a few minutes we shall stop by one of those alabaster factories for a few minutes to show you how could the pharaohs since thousands of years, as you have seen in the museum, make such jars of alabaster, which existed here in big quantities. So we shall show you even how the descendants today do the same work like their ancestors since hundreds of years. And if you are interested in anything what you have, you could just go and give a look. And the price, like everywhere, is not fixed. Show you how they make such vases the same way like what we have seen in the museum since thousands of years. People in the south, they are different from the people in the north. In the north, they are very civilized and very peaceful. So they make carpets, make rugs, make the soft work. But in the south they are hard, that's why they make the hard things like working on the stones and such things. Let's get out please and see it.
عمر عمر خذها ببعيد شوي عشان بس احيانا Hello, hello, hello. Please come here for a second. Show you first how they make it, and then you're free to go. So you know that alabaster stone is kind of marble. It's translucent and shining like that, but at the same time it's so fragile. If you hammer it, it's going to be broken like glass. So to reinforce the stone, first they cut the stone according to their desire, either big or small, according to what they want. Then they cover this stone with old pyjama or some bandage to make the stone strong together, like here. That's it. They cover it with an old pajama, as you see, with clip with adhesive material, so the stone will hold together. And they dig a hole in the floor, and they bury the stone in this hole. So the hole will reinforce the stone until he emptied from inside. After he emptied from inside, he carved it from outside, as you see in this man with jars. But of course, very hard work and very sensitive. He has to be very careful, otherwise the stone is going to be broken. And in the very end, you might see a jar or vase like that, made of one piece of alabaster, handmade, takes almost 10 days to 2 weeks to be finished. There are two kinds of alabaster. One is handmade like this one, which is expensive to be bought, but like 50 pounds or 70 or something like that. And someone made by machine like this one. This one is very easy, you could get it for 7-8 pounds. The people do it at home by machine and moving dish, through which they could make also nice beautiful vase like this one. That's real alabaster. Something else here similar to it, but not alabaster, we call it soapstone, which is this kind of stone. It's easy to be scratched by your finger. We call it soapstone, which is similar to alabaster but so soft you can do it easily by your finger. That's what the people here do to make living, and if you're interested you can go and give a look what we make. Okay?
Oh, you didn't buy the alabaster.
What about if you could?
The guy here said you did not.
I don't want to do an alabaster.
It started out all in one and now they it's America.
بس المرة الجاية نروح ولا بالقمصان بقى عشان هتروح هروح له.
ها؟
نروح المرة الجاية بالقمصان.
طبعا. رجع احنا مش انا بقى حتى خضرا مني.
وين انت عم شام ولا بقمصان يكون عنده؟
Amadeus.
Yes.
Dark.
Dark.
Dark. Dark. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Sit.
Okay, I will.
Once more.
I can't. What's enough? Oh yeah, right in here.
Who's that?
In front of us, we see the temple of the queen had cheap suit.
احنا جوا شوي؟
لا هنا في العربية آخر مش هنا في العربية كده بعد كده.
خلينا هنا بقى.
طيب ماشي اوكي.
This is the queen that dressed like a king?
Yeah, yes. In front of us, we see a very beautiful building consists of 3 floors. 3 floors or 3 terraces above each other, forming a nice harmony, a nice symmetry with the mountains which behind it. The engineer who built this temple was the boyfriend of the Queen Hatshepsut. She could not marry him because she was a queen man. She was a lady king. And the king cannot marry a man in the ancient times. So she got him only as a boyfriend. And he has got 90 titles during his lifetime. He was a sovereign, the chancellor, the private architect, the private doctor, the babysitter of the queen, the engineer who built the temple. And usually the builder of any building, like a pyramid or tomb or a temple, was the unknown soldier. Nobody should know who had built it. Just the name of the king or the queen is enough. But Senmut, the engineer who built this temple, he wrote down his name and his titles, and he's the one who built the temple in the back of the door of one of the rooms of this temple. That when you open the door, you don't see anything because the door will hide the name of Senmut. Through this information, we knew who built the temple. This temple was built 1,500 before Christ. 1,500 before Christ. You might ask me before about the pillars, which has 16 sides. They are in the second floor to the far right. Second terrace to the far right, you see them. The Egyptian engineer, since 1,500 before Christ, he had common sense. A common sense to feel that this temple was built on the foot of the mountain. We have seen many temples like Isis, who was in the middle of the island, Karnak temple in the middle of the village, Komombo in a little mountain near the Nile. So usually the temple should be the highest construction in the surroundings. But this temple was built on the foot of the mountain. Then this temple is going to be minute and insignificant compared with the mountains which behind it. So how could this engineer solve the problem since 35 centuries of a temple on a cliff of the mountain, and at the same time could be visible? He built the temple consists of not only one floor as usual, but 3 floors above each other. Those 3 floors form steps or ladder, ended with the top of the mountain. So now he united between the temple and the mountain and make from all of them together a union between the temple and the mountain. The Queen Hatshepsut was the first man ruled Egypt. I'm just talking to you in the bus for the air condition, and then when we go out there is no. She was a peaceful woman. She sent many peaceful expeditions to Africa and to Asia to bring the ivory and gold and silver. And she wrote down all the news of her conquest to Africa on the walls of her temple. Even in the first floor, she wrote down to us the story of her 2 obelisks, which stood someday in front of Karnak temple. And she mentioned that the journey took 7 months to Aswan to cut the stone. Those 2 obelisks were made in Aswan, where the stone quarry I showed you. Did I tell you before how they stood? Did they stand the obelisk up? Do you want to know?
Yeah.
They built a cylinder. This cylinder was made of stone and mud bricks. This cylinder has a diameter. The diameter of this cylinder should be 1/3 of the height of the obelisk. 1/3. And this cylinder has everywhere holes. Those holes were locked by wooden windows. And they fill the cylinder with sand all the way to the top. And on both sides of this cylinder, they have got 2 ramps. Ramp here and ramp there. And they push the obelisk. The top of the obelisk is to the bottom, and the bottom of the obelisk is to the top. Like that. That's a ramp, and you push it. That's a ramp, and you push it this way. The obelisk its top is here, and its bottom is there. And when the bottom comes to the opening of the obelisk, of the opening of the cylinder, you open the gates of the cylinder, sand comes out gradually, and this one telling you the diameter of the cylinder must be 1/3 of the height of the obelisk. The obelisk is thick from the bottom, from here. So the bottom is going to go down step by step until the obelisk falls down in the cylinder. And it might be a reaction that the obelisk falls down on the other side. That's why they have another ramp opposite to it, so to protect the cylinder, the obelisk from falling down on the other side. So it's very hard work and very slow work, but it's secure. That's how they make the obelisk, because with any small mistake, the obelisk would fall down and then would be broken into 2 pieces. Thutmose III came later on,
and he destroyed the temple of his sister Hatshepsut. To keep the name of Hatshepsut in your mind, remember if you have Hat and cheap suit, that form Hatshepsut, the name of the queen Hatshepsut. And Hatshepsut ruled Egypt through a trick. This trick said she was older than her brother and she's very ambitious. She convinced the priests to make a trick to the public to tell them that she is the daughter of the god. And how did she make that? She claimed that the god Amun slept with her mother, the Queen Ahmos, and then the Queen Ahmos bore a kid, and that kid, the child, and that child was Hatshepsut. That means that she is the daughter of the god Amun. And later on she convinced them that she is not anymore daughter, she is the son of the god. And people should also believe her. So we see this story repeated 2 times of the divine birth, which is similar to Jesus Christ and Mary. Mary has a child without marriage with anyone. The same thing with Hatshepsut and Isis. The God gave her his power to be pregnant, and she got a baby, and that baby was Hatshepsut. This temple, we call it funerary temple. You have never seen before an audio trip funerary temple. All the temples that you have seen were temples of the god, of the state. Like temple of Isis, temple of Sophic, the crocodile, temple of Horus, the falcon-headed god, temple of Amun. But this temple, we call it funerary temple. It's a temple for the king or the queen, not for the god. Usually after the death of the pharaoh, he would be proclaimed like a god, and people should come for him in adoration and give offerings for his soul. When the soul comes from the sky, it could eat and drink. That's why Thutmose III, he could destroy that temple because it was a private temple, but he could not destroy the 2 obelisks in the temple of the god Amun, because that was the temple of the god. But this was a private temple for the king after his death. Okay? Let's now go and see it.
So in these mountains is where the noblemen, etc. were buried, entombed. There are some of the tombs open here. On the other side of this mountain is the Valley of the Kings, where the kings, the pharaohs, were buried. They're basically all just holes into the mountains, and then empty chambers behind there, because all the treasures, of course, are in the museums. They hadn't been stolen. So the Valley of the Kings looks the same as this.
Yeah, priests and nobles and generals.
Damn, something overexposed.
Walking up the slope now. Below us is the first level. We're walking towards the second level. Temple.
They're reconstructing the courtyard of the temple.
Oh.
There are tombs in these areas. It's because they are so isolated in the desert. You have plenty of mountains to hide them in. And the mountains kind of act as natural pyramids. And of course their hope was that their tomb wouldn't be found so that they would last forever. The pharaohs were wrong, because soon after they were buried, they'd be robbed. The only reason Tutankhamen wasn't robbed is because his tomb wasn't found. It was built underneath some other ones. And the rubble from new tombs was thrown on top of his. His wasn't found until 1922. we weren't. All the treasures are in the museum, the treasures that were found. Most of the tombs were found empty. There are some sarcophagi that were found here, probably belonging to noblemen, generals. It's quite early in the morning, so it's not so hot yet. Right now it's only 10 o'clock, but it already feels like 4 o'clock in the afternoon for that kind of heat. So it gets very, very hot here during the day. I'm talking 130 degrees Fahrenheit, way into the 40s. And that's why you get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to come to these things so that you can be here before the actual heat sets in.
Tutankhamen.
Hello.
Tutankhamen.
C'est Scarablo che sono le cazze.
To the right side you see the house of the Polish that who restored the temple of Hatshepsut. They come in the winter and in the summertime they go back home. Because they are very famous in Europe in restoring the churches and cathedrals. That's why they have been dedicated to restore the temple of Hatshepsut.
لا خلافة لا تشارك في موسيقى.
De glans van je haar en de blos op je gezicht. Het stralen van je ogen mooier dan het zonnelicht. Ik heb de Mona Lisa ook gezien. Dat was voorwaar een droom. Maar mooier dan de mooiste schilderij. Ben jij mijn lieveling, ben jij.
And this is the entrance to one of the tombs. You're not allowed to film inside the tombs. So I filmed the outside. Another tomb. All the stands selling little artifacts.
Yes, sure.
Most of them probably made in Japan.
That's good. Look.
So that was the Valley of the Kings, and now we head on to the Luxor temple. And from there back to our cruise ship. And I'm coming back.
This temple, which now totally destroyed and disappeared, because the native inhabitants took the stone of the temple, which behind the two statues, to build their houses and their bridges, and now nothing left from the temple more than those two statues,
which made of one piece of sandstone as the other first one, and second one made of many stones above each other. Would you like to take a picture for them?
Middle of a farm field, we have two giant statues. And as he was just saying, they belong to a temple. The temple is gone to make houses. There's houses back there probably. And this is all that's left sitting. And of course around us are salesmen trying to sell us things, whether we want them or not.
All 5 pound each. Not too much, take this scarab. Look in this, look in this, look scarab. Look scarab, mister, look scarab with.
Yeah.
Original place.
Yeah, that's the original place.
Thank you. Have a nice day, my friend. Thank you. He's going down. Don't go. Going down.
So for one boat, we crawl over top of another boat and get back on shore. After 1 year, the cruise ship kind of looks like this. There we have a little obstacle course before getting back onto the wharf.
TV last night? Huh? Stayed up late.